there was a number of parents that they were pulling their kids from from a celebration and they didn't want it. So the worst that happened to them, from what I remember from the article and the interviews with some of the parents, was that people viewed them in a different way, but there wasn't any educational penalty to them pulling their child or their children from the day when
Right.
of those celebrations that they didn't agree with. One thing I want to add that you mentioned is that I think parents, it seems that even though they want to know, I don't think, I think they're being put in a position to not have conversations that they're want to have at that point in time. I think they planned it a little later on in the child's life instead of at 8, at 10.
Right. And another thing that you got to think about too is there are a lot of younger parents now than there used to be when we were growing up, and a lot of them are scared to say anything. A lot of them are just completely naive to what's going on around them, and that's when we start running into the hypocritical issues. That's when it starts becoming a problem. And then that's when we start getting into, well, you're what's wrong with the world today. Da, 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 da. Like that's where all the hatred starts coming in. It's like, God forbid anybody post something about something in a mom group. If it has to do with a topic like that, all the perfect moms are going to come out of the woodwork and just start being like, oh, no, 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 you don't ever let them teach your kids that. And it's like, you don't have to be that about it. You know what I mean? Like, we can talk about this is gonna be okay. Like, talk to your children, educate your children, so that way when your children walk into the classroom and they hear these things, you can be like, no, that's BS. I know that's BS because my parents talked to me about it. They showed me articles, I read things about it, they gave me the information at my disposal, like, rather than just an agenda being shoved down their throat.
Yeah, I think
And
sometimes people forget that understanding, acceptance, and engaging are three different things. Like, I
yeah,
can understand why someone is living their life a certain way, but I may not want to be around it. And that's perfectly fine. I
yeah.
think people blur the lines and they forget that because a lot of people think that, well, if you don't participate in my lifestyle, that means you're against it. Not necessarily so.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's a great thing that you brought that up because I really think that, like, I think understanding is a huge thing because if people just understood more, then, if people would just take the time to actually sit down and try to understand, we would probably have less issues in the world between peers and between people because people just go off nowadays, especially, alpha and these Gen X, or not these Gen Z kids and all that. It's like they don't even, nobody ever taught them to sit down, shut the up, and actually listen. Like, take some damn wisdom in. You know what I mean? They're just like, oh, whatever. I'm gonna live life how I want to live it. And it's like that's not how we have a what's the word I'm looking for? Successful society per se. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, you've got, it's just such a mixture now. I don't even know how to put any of this into words because everything is just such a mixture now that it's like you don't know. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a double-edged sword every time you turn around. And I don't even know what the right thing to say or do is anymore. I mean, I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and then there's somebody in my ear saying, "Oh no, you're not," and it's just like, and then it makes me question it altogether. But I think it's important to just stay true to your roots, stay true to your beliefs, you know, stand your ground, always stand your ground with the school systems because at the end of the day, your child and your child's education is what is the most important thing. Like, and I don't feel like that falls into education. I feel like that is something that should be elaborated more on at home, and that ninth grade, yeah, cool. Go ahead, talk about it. But we do not need to be teaching kids this when they're in second grade. And that's happening over here. And there are some areas and some schools that aren't even letting the parents have a choice. And to me, that's where I feel like our constitutional rights as Americans have been thrown out the window because you now have taken away our freedom of speech, expression, and now you're taking away our ability to be parents. That's not right.
Yeah, like freedom of speech and being able to communicate like adults, you're always going to potentially be in a position where you're going to offend someone. So I'll give you an example. So if I were to meet someone for the first time and I say hello to them, and if I don't use the proper pronoun, that doesn't mean that I am trying to be offensive in a way. I'm just addressing them based on the appearance that they're given. Now, if I'm mistaken and they correct me, they say, "Hey, you know what, Terrain? My pronouns aren't actually he, him. It's she, her. Perfect. You've corrected me, and that's fine. And then we can go forward." What I think sometimes happens is that people will respond in a hostile way because of their past experiences when they're explaining it. People may be not understood and they get defensive. Now when a new person comes, they're taking out that past trauma, that past rage on this other person who is, for lack of a better word, innocent and who wasn't a part of their past. Like what I try to practice is I use people's names, right? So when
Right.
I use people's names, so that seems to be the safe bet. And when I use the words, let's say sir or madam or things like that, it doesn't come from a malicious or offensive position.